Alright, welcome back. If you're still watching this tutorial series, this is what we are trying to create here. So we got some hit sounds, we have a guy with a sword attacking. In part 1 we sort of made these crates, but there were no sounds. And we're also looking to create some pickups. Sorry, this should be enabled too. And we could see the pickups actually show up on the screen. So with this you can make a simple game. So let's continue where we left off with part one. And let me just turn these off so they don't get in the way here. And turn this character back on. So in our last tutorial we covered a proper way to do a sword swing. And we did some damage. We had some damage. We have a crate that can be broken and emit a sort of particle effect. So let's just recap that. We have this. We have smack. Boom. Crate's gone and we can progress. So let us continue that. So we want to make a sound. So let's go to search for that sound. I'm always using the quick start collection here. Let's go to sound effects, combat. Let's do this sound here. And when you have no health, play the sound. You can check, yep, play once. So when you have no health, play this sound all the way through, which would sound something like this. Cool. So let's see if that works. So it kind of did, but the sound kind of cuts off, and that's because it destroys itself right away, and this whole thing is just boom, it's gone. So we want to put this in a timeline so we hear that sound. Actually, no. Oh. Just cut this part. So now that our crate is sort of working here with the slapping sound, we want to make a collectible. So let's grab a collectible. We're not going to grab a collectible that they already made. We're going to try to make our own. So let's try to make something different. So let's grab let's collect sunflowers. So we're gonna stamp this down, and so we want to make sure that you can actually run through this thing. And we can right now, but if you're choosing something where you can't, let's just confirm that it's not collidable with anything. We want this thing to be sort of able to run right through it. And make sure it does not have any labels here. So now that you've done that, we can sort of shrink this, make sure it's plopped into the ground. We're using this line to sort of tell where the player is. So if you could put something on the line, and if you haven't, that's okay. Just sort of line it up to where he is, and then move with precise move so that it's in line with the axis you're on here. So, well, we want to make this collectible. So you're gonna have to put a microchip on it. So let's go to microchip. I'm just holding L1, just like we did with the crate, and we're just gonna push X and stamp it on there. Make sure it is on there, and you can tell by moving this object around. Yep, it's on there. So we're gonna open that microchip up, and we want to, well, basically, what is a collectible? So we want to increment a number to tell, okay, you have 1 or 2 or however many, We're going to add 1 to a number, and we want it to detect when the player is around. So is the player on top of me? If he is, I'm collected, and I delete myself. So let's do that. We need a trigger zone to detect. We're going to use a label. And we see here that we haven't selected. If we go under label, this tab here, we're saying if anything, any label, even stuff that's not labeled, is in this zone, trigger what comes out of this. So it's saying I am detecting something, because it's looking for everything and it's all glowing. So we want to say, well, we want to detect a friend. So we're just going to uncheck all of them, and we can see that this guy is glowing green. So that's what we want here. And alright. So we want, that should be good. Or sorry, we want to make that a bit smaller. So let's just scale that. That's about right. So if you're in this zone, this gets powered, this wire. So what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to just destroy itself. And maybe emit like a pickup pop and a sound. So we want it to be lifetime. We want it to be like 2 minutes, same as before. No emit speed. And max emit it at once. We'll go 1. We're gonna grab something. Just an effect. I like to use this one, pickup. Just gonna put that next to our other hit effect. Maybe shrink it down. And we're gonna object to emit. We're gonna want to emit this one. And we're gonna want to drag this to where we want it to spawn relative to our pickup. So we want this right on top of our pickup. Just make sure that it's correct in both axes here. Okay. Looks good. So now we want when the player is near us, power on this emitter. We're going to delete this. And once again, we're going to say when this object is emitted, delete. So let's see what happens. Boom. That's perfect. Just going to reverse time there with L3. So 2 things here. We want sound. So let's grab a sound. I want like a nice sound. Gaming, let's say like positive sound. That one's pretty good. So let's detected. Okay, so yep, do all these things when the player is in this zone. So let's hit play. So we can only hear like a very tiny pop. So we can tell the full sound is not playing. And that's because it's deleting itself right when this object is emitted, which is super fast. So you can see here we want 3 things to happen, but we want them to happen in a certain order and in a certain time, and that's why we use a timeline for something like this. So let's name this pickup, and let's say once. So we want it to play all the way through when you're detected. So now we can delete all these wires because we're going to position them in a timeline. So this thing's going to be, well, how long do we want it? Well, once you drag a sound on there, it automatically snaps to how long the sound is. So if I play this timeline here, so we want it to end when the sound is done. So right about there. Alright, maybe a little bit longer. Okay. And now we're going to emit. We want it to emit right at the beginning. We're just going to shrink it with the D-pad up and down here. Drag it onto the timeline. And we want it to be destroyed right at the end. So we're just going to leave the destroyer there. We're also going to zoom in like we did before. So now we want, basically we want it to emit, play the sound, and destroy yourself at the end. So there's going to be a problem, but let's see what it is. We can still see the flower. There's going to be another problem. If we keep running into it, that keeps happening, which is really cool, but we want to fix that. So how do we fix both of those things? So let's fix the first one. So we want it to be hidden during this, right? We don't want to see the flower or the pickup. So let's say hide. Make a keyframe that's along the whole thing. And let's call it hide. And we're going to record it not visible. And let's see what that does. That's perfect, but we still get this problem where we're getting more score and it's replaying. Why does it do that? Well, whenever this zone is detected, it's saying play this all the way through. We're not saying that during this you can't trigger it again. So we should. So let's delete this. We're going to make a node. And no port node. When you're detected, go through this and do this normally. So if we play that, it doesn't actually do anything. But we want another animated keyframe here that turns off this node. So let's say, I like to call this can't re-trigger. There are many ways to do this, but I find this to be the cleanest and easiest. So once again, we have a can't re-trigger animation keyframe that's across the whole thing. And this node here is turned off, not powered. So even if we trigger this, it won't cause this keyframe to re-trigger. And we can see that in action here. Alright, perfect. So currently, it's not doing anything though. I mean, it's not giving us any score like in the demo that I showed. So we want a global variable for that. One of these. And once again, that's under logic and processing, and it's going to be here variable. So we don't want these attached to our player, and that's because these have default values, initial value. If the player dies, we'll be deleting them. So this variable will go back to 0 when they die. We don't want that. We want it on a safe variable that won't die. So what I like to do is make a cube. Let's just, if you push X, you're gonna start smearing, and even if you try to get very close, you're gonna still make this smear. So we want to hold, when you're in this menu, hold L1 and triangle to change it to stamp. You can see right there, R2 to stamp or smear. We want to be in stamp. That way if we push X and hold it, we're not smearing, we have one cube. So let's scope into this. Let's make it like a bright color like that. And it's just going to be a floating cube. So we want it to be, non-visible, non-collidable. Let's keep it visible actually, just so we can work with that. So on this cube, we're going to put a microchip. We're going to name it GameCube. Perfect. Actually, let's make it purple. Just for no reason at all. Alright, so in the GameCube, we want these variables to exist. So we want whatever you call this variable is how you reference it in other things. So we want to call it sunflowers. Sunflower. Let's just say sunflower. So minimum sunflowers you can have is 0. Maximum you can have is, let's say, 99. So let's do a variable modifier. What this means is when you power it on, it can change what value that is. It can set it to something once. It can get what variable it is, so we can read it and do things to it. Or we can add. We want to add 1 to it. And the name of the variable we have to change is sunflower, so we can actually go up and down on the D-pad and search for our variables in our scene, and we should go to sunflower. So we want to change this, make sure this is on when powered on, and we're going to drag this into our timeline here. We want to put it right at the beginning and make it really small. So basically when the sunflower gets picked up, it'll trigger it and it'll up the value of this thing by 1. Alright, so we can actually see that if we hit edit mode, and yeah, so now we're at 1 sunflower. So how do we display that? We can go to gadgets, movers and output, and number displayer. Drag that on the GameCube here. We don't need, the pickup is done, so we can scope out of it. And sunflower, we want to plug this current value into the number range on this number displayer. This will display how many sunflowers we have. So we can drag this up to the top, or we can go into here and go left top. So we want it in the top left. And because we have the current value plugged into the number, you could see we have 0, and now we have 1. Alright, perfect. So that's about perfect. So now we have an asset that we can copy and multiply and do whatever we want with. Alright, thanks for watching the tutorials. Let me know in the comments what you would want to see, if you want me to continue this series or do something else. I'm very happy to help. Alright, bye for now.